When I was young, my parents made me go to a church camp. And they said, this is going to help you make good friends and learn a lot about life and the Bible and all of this stuff. And I resisted, but she made me go. And then for one brief moment, I got excited about it. And then I got there, and my excitement was dashed all to pieces because the kids there were horrible. They were mean-spirited. They were foul. They were just, didn't resemble biblical values, in my opinion. They didn't do really anything to make things a nice atmosphere. And so the problem became 2 days later when I called back and said, hey, Mom, come and get me. Mom and Dad, please come and get me because this is terribly miserable, and there's mosquitoes everywhere. There's bugs everywhere. The cabins are hot. The little water coolers they had in place of actual ACs was just miserable. And they said, well, you're there, and you might as well stay. You've only got 4 more days. Well, actually, it didn't happen like that. That's what they should have said. But what they said instead was, I'll come and get you. And that by about 1:30 a.m. they were there, and my brother and I got to go home. But contrast that with my friend's experience, who also went from our same neighborhood. He called his mother, and his mother said, no, you're staying. You're staying because this is only 1 week of your life, and you are going to enjoy it and learn to love it because you don't have to do it again ever. You're just going to do it once, and you're going to succeed. And even if you hate it now, you will be much better for it in the long run. And even if you aren't, well, you've learned something new. So I talked to him, my friend James, a week later when the camp was all done. And he said, oh, it wasn't so bad. I actually had some fun. You should have stayed around. The nasty part went away, and we had some fun. So the lesson here is James pushed through because his parents made him push through. Ours did not on this occasion. And there was less of an experience. That's the way it is with fasting and experiencing weight loss, for those of you who've never experienced it. Now, most of us have dropped a few pounds here and then. I'm giving this, by the way, because I'm getting so much input on the user from experiencers of who are doing fasting now. And what they realize is they've never done it before. So they get into a situation where they go in motivated, and then they start to have that motivation dinged, and then by day 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, they lose it because it wasn't what they expected. Just like my analogy at church camp, some of you you're going in blind, and because you haven't mentally prepared for what's expected. Now remember, it's usually a bad idea to prepare, per my last video, because when you prepare, you run into things you can't prepare for. But what you can prepare for is you can prepare your mental attitude for being blown away by something, understanding that something isn't what you expected. That's something you can prepare for. But what I call this is perpetual reverence. Perpetual reverence is that expectation that when you go in, you've got nothing to lose but to stick with it and try it. I had a teacher friend that she had some occupational therapy career, and to qualify for working with a certain special school for the blind, she had to go 2 weeks under supervision blind. And she had to wear and literally live every aspect of their life, from the bathroom to intimate matters to eating to preparing meals, blind. Well, she thought that it would be just an experiment, but then she realized the second day that this was extremely difficult to do, because everything that you've come to know and depend on has been with eyesight. If you don't have eyesight, then your life changes. Well, she made it through the 2 weeks because she had to. and she was periodically monitored. And she didn't cheat, she told me, even when she wasn't monitored, because by then she realized that this was an experience that would quite honestly change her life. That's perpetual reverence. That's perpetual reverence. You go in and you say, look, this experience is going to be not what I expected. It's probably not going to be as fun, at least at first, if not longer. It's probably going to have effects on my body and on my mind that I'm not prepared for. But it's the fact that you haven't prepared for it that means you need to go and see it through. Again, that's what I call perpetual reverence. And I can make yet another example of my grandmother taking me to a doctor's appointment as a child, when for taking my mother and then watching us little kids in the lobby. And it was so long a wait because kids hate waiting. Time is going by different. But then when we've had enough experiences, my mother got very sick when we were little, and we had to, our grandparents had to do a lot of parenting in the very early years, at least in part, on when doctor's appointments were involved. And as a result of that, we had to learn to wait. And I finally got the understanding that anytime I'm about to wait for a long time, I better come mentally prepared for the ordeal. So I did. I would come and say, look, we're going to tell stories the first few minutes, then we're going to do this, then we're going to draw. And a little kid that I was, I made use of my time excellently, all despite myself. And I had help, of course. I had a good grandmother who made it possible. But that's what you do when you start fasting. You go in with perpetual reverence and you say, this is going to be the next 6 weeks, the next 3 months of my life are going to be the most amazing thing, most life-changing thing that will ever probably happen. Next to your marriage and your getting the big career change that you wanted. What are all the aspirations in your life? This is going to be right up there with them. It absolutely will. Make no mistake about it. It's going to be the thing that changes your game for the better. But there will be lots of sacrifice to put in. And you've got to keep going. That's perpetual reverence. So that's how it manifests. When you go and you think, you don't say, oh, damn it, I can't eat as much as I want again. This is going to be miserable for, 3 months, 8 months, whatever, however much you have to lose. And of course, all you do is calculate ahead, assume about a 1.5 to 2 pound loss per week, and estimate how many weeks you have to go to your goal weight. It's not, nuclear physics. It's pretty easy. But if once you do that, you say, I'm looking forward. You hold it in reverence in your mind and you say, I'm looking forward to doing this because this is going to change my game. So it's like having something to do over and saying, hey, if I had it to do over, I would do it well. Well, you have me and others now who have been forerunners for you. We can tell you what to expect. So go in with our confidence and say, let's do it right. Let's do it and follow all the tips that, that you have. You have my channel and the early videos that I did explaining the process, and you have many, many other channels now that are people that are coming along who have completed their journey or else are right about to complete their journey and are able to speak authoritatively on it. So that's what you do. That's a sense of reverence. You don't begrudge it. You go in, and every time you sit down to a meal, you don't say, well, I can't have as much as I want. You say, okay, here's what I get to eat. And you go through the mental steps that I described in other videos about taking mental ownership of the meal. You sit down and you say, okay, I'm going to fill up one plate one time. I'm going to have 1 calorie beverage. I'm going to weigh myself 1 day of the week. You don't have to, but you should. You should at least do 1 day, but if not, you can do every day. I'd recommend doing 1 day. But you do that, and you record the weight, and you keep going. You envision eating the meal and how satisfying it will be to get up after that small meal and to go back about your day productively, knowing you won't be tired, you won't feel like crap, you will feel like there's a lot of room left over in your stomach, but you already knew that. That's perpetual reverence. So that it's not as though you're letting go for a while. You're not saying, well, I'm going to splurge now and I'm not going to do it. You don't think that way. Because if you factor into your thinking, it would be like our teacher my old teacher colleague saying, "Oh well, I'll cheat just a little. I'll pop the blindfold up and see what everybody sees in the real world when I really have to." That's not the real experience. You're not getting the real experience. So you don't factor in cheat days, which is why I don't talk very much anymore about cheat days, because people get the wrong idea. That distorts and dilutes the experience of perpetual reverence. So that's what it is. You go in and you say, this is my experience. I'm going to own it. I'm going to live it to the full. Even if I'm completely blown away by how difficult it is, it's still an experience. It's like being at camp and finding out that there's all sorts of gnats and biting flies and mosquitoes, and there's no air conditioner, and there's no Nintendo, which at the time was the brand new video game system that came out and I loved and I couldn't take with me. And you had to get up at a certain time and make your bed, and then you had to go and do a certain thing. But you only do that 5 days. And then you go back to your pedantic life of, doing whatever it is you do. But in the case of OMAD, what you're doing is restructuring your game, and you have no idea how it will change you on down the road. Go back and watch The Prison of Reformation, and you can see how the big time changes and perception changes start to work on your mind afterwards. But you don't have to worry about that now. So Perpetual Reverence says that when you eat with these things in mind, your food, you never let go. So your food, you treat it mentally as though it's anything else you have to do. I need to paint the garage. I need to clean up the upstairs bathroom. You put it in a task list with you when you do how you do everything else in your life, and not suddenly, over the time that you're fasting, you realize food becomes properly prioritized, and you're not eating to live because you don't have any psychological, or you're not living to eat. You don't have any psychological attachments on things. You don't go around and say, "Oh my God, this is incredible. I have to, enjoy this food. I'm going to stuff myself and then I'm going to lay down for a few hours." You don't do that. You stop that. And because you broke those psychological attachments, now you're in perpetual reverence. Your entire journey, you're in perpetual reverence.